Hello and welcome. Thank you everybody for being here and participating in democracy with us today. This is a great turnout. I'm so glad to see so many people here. We're going to have a great candidates forum tonight. The Democratic Party's got 4 great candidates, and this is a great chance for you to get to know them. The most important part is you get to know them and remember to vote on August 9th and then in November as well. The format of this forum is going to be the candidates are going to do 4-minute intros, and then I'll be asking them questions. I'll try to go for about 45 minutes, and then we can take a break. In the meantime, I'm going to try to work in audience questions. I've gotten some already. There's some scraps of paper and pens if you want to write one and submit them. I'll try to get to as many as I can. But we've got a lot of questions already. School spending, the economy, the lake, lots of other issues that we're going to get to. If you haven't already, if you can mute your cell phones or put them on vibrate, that'd be great. I want to thank LCA TV for covering us tonight. So this is going to be broadcast as well. And I believe the Islanders here somewhere too, and there's some good coverage on this campaign. And finally, thank you to the candidates who are all here. Starting from our left, we've got Evan Hill, Ben Joseph, Mitzi Johnson, and Andrew Julo. Let's give them a little round of applause for even running. Okay, let's get started. We're going to start on the left. Evan, why don't you start us off with your introduction?
Hi, everyone. My name's Evan Hill, and I'm from Isle-Chittenden, and I have lived in the island since 1971. I was the town clerk and the town treasurer in Isle-Chittenden for about 11 years. I've 3 years as town treasurer, 11 years as town clerk. I have been in the past, I've been the county treasurer, and I did that for maybe 10 years, and I have been a state employee for 30. I did 3 years over in St. Albans at the courthouse over there, and I have been in this courthouse for 27 years. And I am retiring this week. And so I'm seeking office. I've always been interested in this, and it has given me an opportunity because I'm retired and I will have more time to be able to run for this. I see areas within the state, especially within the government, where I think things could be changed and taxes could be saved. And it is my hope that we will be able to cut down on management. I think there's a lot of middle management in the state, and I think many people would like to find someone at the Department of Motor Vehicles that actually will renew your license instead of someone who's off in the back room as management, typing away and not engaging with the public. We need frontline employees. And the frontline employees are not the employees who earn the great amount of money. It's management, and there's a lot of management within the state of Vermont. The other issue that I have is I think that we are lacking in services out here. We have, we send money to Montpelier, and we pay for services and get very little in return. We support this building almost wholeheartedly with our taxes. That is not true of other counties. And we support the state police, and the state police are not available to us. The Grand Isle Sheriff, Ray Allen, is always desperately trying to find money to pay for his deputies. I don't know if people realize, but Sheriff Allen is the only person that's paid by the state, and he has to come up with all the money to pay his deputies. So that's an issue for me, and it's also an issue for me that we share all these services with Franklin, and there'll be Franklin Grand Isle, or there'll be Chittenden Grand Isle, and they're not out here. They're always over in Franklin, or they're over in Chittenden. And I feel that we pay taxes, and I would like to see more services out in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Ben?
My name is Ben Joseph. I've lived in North Hero for 25 years. When I first moved up here, I was working as a public defender in Burlington, where I worked for 6 years. Then Howard Dean appointed me to become a judge. I served on the bench from 1998 till last year. I formally retired in 2010, but I stayed on a part-time basis until October of 2015. At the present time, I'm a selectman in North Hero. I'm on the Planning Commission. I've gotten roped into being the town health officer. I'm waiting for that rope to drop on my head. In addition, I'm a member of the VBA, Vermont Bar Association Board of Governors. I'm the president-elect of the Franklin Grand Isle Bar Association. I'm on the policy board for the Chittenden Unit of Special Investigations, which investigates and helps in the prosecution of crimes, mostly against children. I have some other things that I do as public service. I'm seeking this nomination and I'm seeking this job because I think it's very important and I can do quite a bit to help save this courthouse. There's been a decided move in recent years to close this courthouse specifically and other so-called small courthouses in Vermont. Earlier this year, I was talking to Dick Mazza. He told me that the governor had told him that he was going to close the Grand Isle Courthouse. And Dick Mazza said, over my dead body. When Dick told me this story, I told him that I pray for his health. But I want to do more than just pray for his health. I think if I were to be in the legislature, I could really provide a public service because I know of no other person who's got the judicial experience that I have who's gone to the legislature. I think I could really help by explaining what the job is and why what the Supreme Court calls the chronic underfunding of the judiciary has been so hurtful. It's caused delays which have plagued this courthouse and other courthouses. And I think we simply need more judicial resources. This total state budget is $5.7 billion a year. The state appropriates $43 million for its judiciary. It's less than 1%. This happens at a time when the judiciary in statewide collects about $23 million plus. And that goes into the general fund. I've had people who have come to me complaining that they're being fined because the judiciary needs money. I want to assure you that any fine that's imposed by a judge in the state does not go into the judicial budget, it goes into the general fund. The typical state contribution to its judicial function is between 1% and 3%. I really think it's time that, I think the total state budget should be adjusted so the 2% of what we spend on the judiciary, and I can go into details about that if you want them. The things I would focus on in addition to judicial funding, I want our Superior Court and our Probate Court to be better supported. We have an excellent probate judge. I don't mean to embarrass him, but he's here tonight. Ned is terrific. And the Supreme Court has cut his pay to $1,000 a month. It's ridiculous for a man of his experience and his proven quality. And it's part of a design to shrink the judiciary, to put an end to the probate courts in the small counties. I want to go down there and tell them what's going on, and I want to explain to them that we need more than 1 day a week, which is typically what we get. I get the 30-second sign, I got it. I just want to show you this notebook contains the files on 3 cases that I did in one day when I recently sat, and there were 25 cases on the schedule. You can't do this job in 1 day. If you come over here to do the Superior Court job, you have to have hours of preparation time. I'm pink. Thank you very much. I'll be back, I hope.
Thank you. Mitzi.
My name is Mitzi Johnson. I've been your state representative for the past 7 terms, and I currently serve as the chair of the excuse me,
That's okay.
of the Appropriations Committee, which writes the state budget. Not only does my committee develop the budget, but my committee also gets every single piece of legislation that changes state spending, that makes recommendations on how to increase or decrease state spending or increase or decrease taxes. And if you've ever served in a broader body before, you know that the subcommittees are really where a lot of the stuff gets done. So it's really an honor, and it's really exciting to be in a committee and to chair the committee that has fingers in so many different arenas and really gets to dig into the meat of what state government is and how well it provides services to all of you. My background, I have a pretty diverse background. I moved to the islands in the early 90s after graduating from UVM, and have worked in farming, construction, nonprofit management, in my family's small manufacturing business, and I currently am the executive director of the Adaptive Leadership Network, which is a global organization that provides training and support for leadership and complex problem solving. The reason that I really love this job so much is that in the position that I'm in, it's really all about problem solving and trying to find those pressure points, trying to find the kind of the center of the knot that's keeping a problem really entrenched in our communities, and trying to figure out how to loosen up that knot to make government work better, to make our communities work better. Things that I have really fought for recently is trying to make the budgeting process a lot more transparent. I've tripled the amount of public input and testimony in the budget process. We have gotten to a point where every single department, agency, entity that gets money that comes in front of us has to begin their presentation with data about their results, about how they apply money and what we get for the investment of your tax dollars. And we're starting to really use that to put more money into the things that work and really decrease money in the places that don't work. If you look at the various budget growth rates in the last 10 years or so, my 2 years as chair, we've been able to slow budget growth rates, while I think trying to focus our investment on really key services in places where Vermont's really hurting. We will be seeing a new judge in the Franklin-Grand Isle County Court system this year. Because of the work of my committee, we've put more money into Department for Children and Families that's seeing an incredible crisis based on vulnerability of children, largely due to opiates, and really tried to work to strengthen our community-based programs. It's a real honor to be in a leadership position in the State House, and I think if you ask anybody on my committee, they'll tell you they've given me a lot of support and a lot of confidence and compliments in trying to build a really cohesive and integrated team that compromises to work together.
Thank you. Andy.
All right. Well, good evening. I'm Andrew Julo. I'm originally from South Hero. I attended Folsom. I attended South Burlington High School, and I went to UVM for as long as I could afford it, and then went out west and finished my degree. I've lived in North Hero for the last 11 years, and I am currently serving as the chairman of the North Hero School Board. I've held that position for 8 years. I have also been the chairman of the Grand Isle Supervisory Union School Board for 3 years. I was chairman of the North Hero Development and Review Board for 5 years. And I'm also currently serving as the chairman of the County Act 46 Study Committee. I've also been a library trustee. I am the collections coordinator for the Marine Corps' Toys for Kids program here in the islands. And I've been a Little League coach. And so I've gotten to know a lot of people in the islands throughout my years. Those who don't know me may know my mother. She's the fire chief down in South Hero, a great lady, or my father, who works just up the street here at the boat shop. So we Julos are not many, but we are ubiquitous. Got a lot of issues that I care a lot about, and I'd like to share 3 of them with you right now. And the first is education. I think the support that we give to public education says an awful lot about who we are as a society. And I know that education is going to have a great voice in who we become as a society. I think we do a great job with our pre-K to 12 education in this state. But the fact is when our kids graduate from 12th grade, they face the second highest in-state tuition costs in the nation. Many kids have to leave, and many of them do not come back. I support 2 years of tuition-free enrollment at CCV and Vermont Technical College as a way of keeping our best and brightest in the state. I'm a believer in small agriculture. I think there's tremendous potential for it here in the islands, but our regulations have to keep up. I visited a small poultry operation in Isle-Chittenden recently. Beautiful, meets all state regulations, all federal regulations, but they can't buy insurance. And so if anyone gets sick off of any of their birds, their business goes up in smoke. I work with a person who raises grass-fed beef here in North Hero, and the amount of hoops that he has to jump through just to slaughter a cow is astounding. And it can never be anything more than a hobby because of those regulations. So I think we need to work with the state to make our regulations common sense so that we can have a small, thriving, small agriculture business here in the islands. And lastly, I am deeply concerned about the deepening vein of poverty here in Grand Isle County. At the North Hero School District, we started last fall with 103 students. 11 of them were legally homeless. 11 out of 103 in North Hero, Vermont, legally homeless. 1 out of 3 children in Grand Isle County are food insecure. We are expecting a major demographic shift in the next 15 years. We are going to go from 14% of our population being over the age of 65 to 32%. And these kids are going to support us, and 1 out of 3 of them is walking around hungry. So we have to do better for them, and we have to do better for ourselves. So these are some of the issues that I feel passionately about. It's what drove me to go through this crazy process of running for political office, and I look forward to discussing them here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. All right. Just as note, can everyone hear everyone? The voice carries well here. Good. So let's start off. We got a question from the audience, and we're going to sort of move down the line. So Ben, you'll start these answers, and candidates will have 2 minutes to answer these. It's a question about the deficit. How big an issue is the deficit? How much does it affect the budget? What can you do about the deficit? Are there areas of the state budget you feel could be reduced?
Can be reduced. Well, as I made clear, my principal immediate concern is the state of the judiciary, which is really in crisis. And I think that we're treating the judicial branch, I like to say, as a judicial twig. We do not have enough judges. We do not have enough docket clerks. We do not have enough support staff. When I last sat in this courtroom, I did a full day's work, and at 4:30, I was still trying, cases were going on in front of me. And I called this case, and a man stood up, and I asked him how many witnesses there were, and he said 8. And I said, I simply can't do an 8-witness case starting at 4:30. I have to continue this matter. And he was sitting where you are, and the guy blew up and said, look, I've been waiting for hours. I got all these people here, and this is the 3rd time. And I felt very badly for him. I apologized as best I could, but I couldn't do anything about it. And these kinds of delays are damaging people. I had a case in Franklin where a kid had been taken into custody on a so-called Chins petition in February. It came in front of me in St. Albans in October. And when I asked the parties, where's this little boy now, I was told, oh, he's living with his, I said, is he still with a maternal grandmother, which was what the file said. And they said, no, we moved him to his mother's house. Now, I knew, because I'd read the file, that his mother lived with a convicted sex offender, that a colleague of mine once gave 10 to 30 years for molesting a 12-year-old child. So I demanded an explanation, and what I got was, the worker says that the man had been to treatment, and so it was okay to put the kid back. So by the end of the day, I had the kid out of the house with the convicted sex offender and back in another place. We need judicial resources. That case was supposed to be in front of a judge in 30 days, not 6 months. And this has got to be handled very soon. I'm pink again, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitzi.
My committee members will tell you that I actually really bristle at the word deficit. It implies that Vermont is spending money that we do not have in the bank. And Vermont has always passed a balanced budget. There isn't a deficit. We don't have that ability to do so like the federal government has. We do this year have a revenue shortfall where revenues came in $16 million under what was expected in one fund. They came in $5 million over what was expected in a variety of other small funds that go into the general fund. So there's a delta there of $11 million and change. But what you will hopefully start hearing in the meetings that I'll be attending tomorrow is that we also underspent, particularly in the Medicaid program, by about $25, $6, $7 million. So there's actually carry forward money at the end of this year. So in terms of a year-to-year basis, Vermont has always had a balanced budget, and my committee has worked really hard to really tighten that up, to build our reserves, to weather a lot of economic storms. And I think the two places that we need to continue to work on, we've passed additional legislation this year to catch up some of our retirement systems, particularly teachers' retirement, and make sure those are solvent for the long haul. And based on the amount of federal money that we get and sort of the volatility of our income sources, because we're such a small state, we really need to continue to build reserves. And I'm hoping that on Monday, the Joint Fiscal Committee that I'm a part of will put an additional $5 million into long-term reserves starting in FY17. So I feel like we are really getting a good handle on long-term fiscal stability.
Andy.
Right, well, I will take Mitzi's word on the actual balance of the state at this particular moment, but on a higher level to just talk about deficits and whether they're a good thing or a bad thing. I think we all would love to have a balanced budget, but our history shows that there is a time when it is appropriate for government spending to be increased, and there's a time when it's appropriate to be decreased. And when the economy is struggling, that's a time when we do need to increase our government spending. But to the second part of that question, is there an area that we see that could be cut from? And I'm going to surprise some people here, and I'm going to say that we do have to look at our education spending in the state of Vermont. It's $1.5 billion, and it's pretty out of whack with the rest of the country. And it would be one thing if that increasing budget led to increasing results, but the fact is that we're actually losing programs at our pre-K to 12 level across the state. So we don't want to compromise on quality, but I think that those numbers speak to a system that is probably broken and needs to be revisited. And that's that process that we've started here in the county with the Act 46 Study Committee, and it's going on all across the state, is how do we look at education and come up with a different model that costs less? Because looking at the demographics that are coming forward, a continually declining enrollment and an increasingly aging population, we're going to have to do it differently in the future.
Okay. Evan?
Hi, again, I've been a state employee for 27 years, plus 3 as a temporary. And one of the issues that I see, and I take Mitzi's word for the balanced budget, and I believe that that is true and it's functioning well. What I take umbrage with is the way the cuts are made. And when you start cutting employees that actually serve the people. So when you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you're renewing your license, you stand in line for 2 hours. Do you want somebody at the Department of Motor Vehicles who will renew your license, or do you want somebody in the back room emailing? And one of the things is every time they make cuts, they look to the bargaining employees, and that's where the cuts are made. And I don't agree with that, because I think we have too much management within the state of Vermont and too little frontline employees. And so I think that needs to be looked at, and I don't think it can be a management decision, because management is going to protect their own jobs. And I also have an issue with courthouses. I really want to keep our courthouse open here in Grand Isle, They have courthouses in every county, and I don't see why we or Essex County should be an exception. And I believe that is going to keep happening. They are going to keep trying to close this court or limit the functionality of this court, because that has been what they have done in the past, and they've tried to change venue. Every time we turn around, they're making an amendment that changes the complexion of this courthouse and in Essex and in Orange. And our diligent state's attorney is always on top of that, Doug DeSabato, and Ned Spear. He's always aware of that. I think that the budget needs to be reviewed, and it has to be thought about in a different way.
Thank you. All right. On to the next question. This one will start with Mitzi. Due to Act 46, our towns are being pushed to change their school governance through school district mergers, and some of these mergers have been voted down similar. And we'd like your thoughts on that. Is Act 46 good? Does it need to change? Yes, your thoughts.
So when Act 46 was moving through the legislature last year, it was clear that it was headed down a really strong track. So Bob Krebs and I worked to loosen up some of the requirements, the minimums, the sort of necessary groupings of students to make it a little more island friendly. A bunch of the legislation that was passing out of the Education Committee would have meant that the island towns, even if we all combined resources, if we wanted to work together as a county, we wouldn't have been able to because the thresholds were too high. So worked to kind of loosen that, and I'm happy to keep working to make it work for for the small communities that we have here that are really detached in a very geographic way from other towns. I think the core function of it in improving opportunities and educational offerings for kids are really crucial. One of the key pieces of testimony we heard was that one of the valedictorians of a Vermont high school was asked, hey, are you going to go to UVM and get free tuition as a Green and Gold Scholar? And she wasn't able to because her high school didn't even offer the minimum offerings to be able to get her into the high school. So I think getting island communities, but also just statewide, getting towns to work together. We have the highest number of administrators per student in the country, and I think we really need to find a way to better work together as communities to make sure that our dollars are being spent on kids, not administration.
Right. Andy, Act 46?
Yeah, well, I am chairing the committee here in the county, and it's a weird and twisted path that's led me to that role. I was elected 8 years ago to the North Hero School Board in large part because I opposed consolidation, and I have loved governing over a small school district. The effort that the teachers put in there is it's amazing. But the resources that we have been able to provide to those teachers have been dwindling. And 2 years ago, we had a budget failure that we were forced to cut the band program and our Spanish language program. And it killed me. So in December 2014, Grand Isle, North Hero, and Isle-Lamont sat down and started a conversation about how we could do better. With the passage of Act 46, we were joined by Alburgh and South Hero. And that conversation has been long overdue, because while we do have some differences in our communities, we have a lot more in common than we realize. And I think most importantly, we share the same vision for our students. And that's a pretty solid foundation to build on. I understand the angst that some people have, and I share it, but I also fear that with an aging population and declining enrollment, that if we continue on our current path, that the students are going to be the losers in that scenario. So Act 46 has provided the funding, it has provided the kick in the pants that perhaps we needed, and it has provided the flexibility for us to sit down and talk about how we recraft the model that can take us deep into the 21st century. So It's taken me a while to get there, but I do support Act 46.
Thank you. All right, Evan, Act 46.
I think we need to support Act 46. I think all the towns need to get together and have a common goal. I think it's the job of the committee, the supervisory committee, to come up with a plan and sell it to the towns, because everybody's worried about their children. From end to end, I believe we're 30 miles long. That's a long distance to travel for a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. Parents are concerned, and I think perhaps some accommodations could be made in the state for the county of Grand Isle because of the length and breadth of it. It's not just a simple half-hour drive, because they go around in buses and they pick up these children. And that is concerning to parents. It would be concerning to me if it was my child. And I believe that administration is overburdened. There's too many administrators for the county, and we have to transfer the funds to give these children what they need. And I also believe that sending money out of our tiny little county to other schools is not productive, when the whole point was to equalize education. And anybody who lives in the islands has got to know that our education is not as equal as what they can get in Colchester, because they have more funds and they have more children. And so I think some accommodations need to be discussed within Montpelier for our unique situation.
Ben, Act 46.
2 minutes, huh? Thanks a lot.
Now you're down to 40,
Yeah, right,
45.
At bottom, I'm opposed to Act 46 in that it compromises local control. I think it's, I think if my town and Isle of Mont and Grand Isle want together willingly, that's fine. I think there should be a referendum on that if it's going to come to pass, and it might work. I think we have to take one step back and remember that by state law, this county sends $7 million a year to Montpelier for other people's schools. $1 million comes back to Alberg. $6 million leaves us and does us nothing. The whole notion that each student in the state should have the same amount of money spent on that student is really very wrong-headed, because the economies of scale are such that if you're in South Burlington and you have a very large number of students in one building, you're going to offer a great deal more. It's more expensive to provide education of a quality in a rural setting. And the idea there should be equal spending on each student, that's nonsense. There should be more money spent on the students in rural locations such as ours, so that you don't have to cut programs, so that you can continue to provide a quality education. I think if we, I did my tax bill. I got my tax bill yesterday, and it told me that of that several $1,000s, $2 out of every $3 is going somewhere else. And we start from there, and that puts us behind the 8 ball. I don't think that it's necessary to go ahead with this in the way it's been structured. I really feel living out here that we are kind of getting the short end of the stick over and over again, and it's wrong. It's wrong. We provide this courthouse. We get $200,000 a year is spent on the personnel for this courthouse, and we're sending $6 million for other people's schools. We're not being treated well. I want to do what I can to change that. Thank you.
All right. The next question will start with you, Andrew. Some of the community members here have received some literature from other Democratic candidates in the state. This one's from Matt Dunn, who says Vermont's one of 7 states with no ethics commission, and one of just 3 states that doesn't require candidates for office to disclose all relevant financial information. If elected, would you support the establishment of an ethics commission to work as well as require candidates for public office to disclose relevant information, financial information?
Sure. Okay. I think the argument against an ethics commission has been that Vermont is relatively well behaved, and that we don't need it because we haven't had the issues here in the state that others have had. I just have personally found in my experience that whenever you're in a government position, and it doesn't really matter how small it is best to be as transparent as possible. So I would support an ethics commission being formed in this state.
Thank you.
That's all there is to say about that.
I am in support of an ethics commission. Anthony Polino in the state government put that forward. I think it's important. I think it's important that it even trickles down to the towns. There's too many relatives that are all interconnected, and when you have that, you begin to have problems. And I think it's important that somewhere, somehow along the way, somebody's checking up on this to be fair to the taxpayers of Vermont.
Good. Hi. No, I would support an ethics commission, and I think it has to be transparent. I think one of the things that's very, very important, that all the stuff in the news now makes me think of this often, is there should be public confidence in our government, in our representatives, in the people who administer governmental programs. And if there are ethics complaints, they should be thoroughly reviewed and the findings should be aired so that people have confidence in the system. The alienation between small communities and larger government units is very serious. I think the Ethics Commission would be very helpful. Thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, I support an ethics commission as well, and a couple of years ago, I don't exactly remember when, voted for certain disclosure information to increase. I believe now I have to sign something at the beginning of a session saying, here's who my other employers or major sources of income are, that kind of thing. And you know, again, when you get down to sort of the committee level, we all get to know each other pretty well, and folks are pretty good generally about asking a question of a witness and saying, you know, to be clear, I'm a real estate broker, says one of my committee members, or, you know, my partner's in the fire department, or whatever. But I think formalizing that is a good idea.
All right. So this question has been brought up a couple times in your comments already, but the general question is, what are your thoughts about the courthouse here? Keeping, moving? Are we providing the right justice to our citizens? And we're back to starting with you, Evan.
I think it's very important to keep our courthouse open. As I said before, all the other counties have it. I think it's unfair that we have to support this building all on our own. When other counties don't, I think that needs to be looked at. I think we need to keep cases within this county. The people who come to court are poor people. They don't have transportation. They can't be going someplace else. And if you start sending people to Chittenden or Franklin, they're going to be waiting in line, and they're going to have another person who had to drive them because they didn't have a license. We need justice right here locally, and we deserve justice right here locally.
Okay. Ben?
I think it's important on this subject to mention that over the last 20 years or so, that the function of the courts in Vermont has changed perceptively. It's no longer just a place where there are civil actions, criminal prosecutions, you know, some domestic relations matters. Now we're having a lot of time spent on public service which is protecting people. Last year there were over 100 stalking complaints filed in Franklin County. Every time that this court meets, there's something pending for relief from abuse. The last count, there were 18 pending CHINS cases in this county. These children, I'm sorry, I'm speaking in abbreviations, children in need of services. Part of this is due to the opioid scourge and young parents who have children. I've sat in cases where the child's been born on heroin withdrawal. This is a very serious business that the courts are now having to cope with, and it's really increased the workload. At present, you know, recently there was one judge added there had been a vacancy in the number of judges in this state for over 4 years. And the governor has to initiate the nomination process, and he didn't do it until recently. So now the legislature provided money for this one more judge. So now you're fully complemented with judges at a level that was set in 1998. This is just, thanks, this is just not right. There has to be more, there has to be judicial supervision under the law. We have to have the courts, they have to be open, they have to serve people. They've got to protect kids. The social consequences of not taking care of these problems as best you can are enormous. A lot of these children are going to live with post-traumatic stress disorder for the rest of their lives. We've got to get in early and help them. Thank you.
Mitzi.
In my time over the years in the legislature, have taken some strong action to support this courthouse and make sure it stays open. In 2006, there was a major proposal for judicial restructuring that would have eliminated this courthouse entirely. There was legislation pending in a committee to do that. And I, with at the time Ira Trombley, was able to get language into the bill, not only reversing that, but putting into statute that every county shall have a courthouse and court services shall be delivered in every county. There is more work to do, but we made major strides then. Last year, the governor proposed cutting the judicial budget by $500,000 in the budget adjustment, which was my committee, and my committee reversed that and ultimately gave the judiciary a $2 million, $2.4 million increase last year. Last year there was also an attempt to do this venue change, which sounds like administrative whatever, but it's a serious proposal that would require people to go, as Evan referenced, other places for court services, and I was able to keep it out of the budget and make sure it didn't become law. This year, when there was another big push for that, I was able to get a carve out for Grand Isle County to make sure that this county didn't get targeted. And again, gave them additional financial resources. The new judge increased payments for sheriffs to provide security and increased money for security equipment in courthouses. We are seeing an incredible amount of pressure from children in dangerous situations. So we're going to have to keep making sure, monitoring these various increases and making sure that it's what we need to protect our judicial system and access to justice.
Okay. Well, I am by far the least versed on this topic as compared to the three people to my right. I will just say that I think with any department where, well, every department, funds are tight, you have to prioritize. And I think in terms of the judiciary, family court needs to be at the top. Children can't be in abusive situations while they wait for us to get our act together. The law has changed recently to allow some technology, some Skyping or video conferencing in courts. I think we can use that at the absolute lowest level, traffic tickets, to free up some time in this building so we can get to the important stuff, which is that family court. Those are my meager thoughts on this topic, but I do want to take an opportunity as a Democrat to recognize the three Democrats to my right and what they've contributed to this process. And, you know, Evan with 27 years in this building, Ben as a family court judge. I mean, I can't even imagine the things that you've seen and heard and had to come to peace with. So thank you for your service in this county. And you know, I think we focus on the money that's not here, but this building is still open. There are people still working here. There are court cases happening, and Mitzi has been a large part of funding that. So thank you, the three of you.
Well, our friend Bob Krebs is not running this year, as we all know. He spent a lot of his time at the State House on lake and shoreline protection. We all support protecting the lake, but there's always a difficult balance between protection and landowner rights or burden on agriculture. Where do you think the right balance is for the state? And we'll start with you, Ben.
Well, I think that the quality of the water in the lake is, it's more than just an aesthetic consideration, because it's essential to the tourist businesses which provide a lot of employment in the islands. I will never forget pulling in my boat into Hibbard Bay at the end of the county in 1991, and looking down in 10 feet of water and seeing a sand bottom with fish nests. You know, the fish would make a little circle and put the eggs in and all that stuff. If you go out in that bay now in that 10 feet of water and look down, it's black muck. Sometimes you can't see the black muck because there's so many weeds that you can't see, actually see the bottom. I can't, you know, I don't know specifically what the balance is, but we've got to start with a concerted effort to get the lake clean enough so it can be used. I'll never forget Billy Tuttle telling me that she sits in front of her house on this side of the island, and she can see a stream of crud coming down from the Siskoy down to the drawbridge, where it passes out toward the Broad Lake. It's just got to stop. I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know. I think you can't put a dollar figure on it. It's very important to the economy. It means a great deal to the islands. It means a lot to all of us aesthetically, but it's just got to happen. And you know, I don't knock Bob. I'm sure he's tried hard. I think it may have discouraged him. He's tried so hard and hasn't accomplished as much as he hoped. But I thank him for his service, and I'll try to keep on fighting for this if I get elected. Thank you.
All right, Mitzi?
Yeah, Bob's been an incredible advocate in this area and sat on the right committee to do that. So I voted for the water quality legislation that went through last year, and it came through our committee, increased funding to really prevent further pollution of the lake, and really dedicated a lot of resources to the agriculture sector and really making sure that, you know, there are quite a lot of laws on the books already, and like every other set of rules out there, some people follow them better than others. And so a lot of the resources that were put into that ag water quality bill had to do with making sure that there was the technical assistance, that there was support and outreach, but also a lot of enforcement for existing water quality regulations for agriculture, for municipal roads. You know, our small dirt roads that are right next to the lake have an impact on water quality, and so making sure that we're doing everything we can to build them properly. I think another key piece of what we need to work on is there was a bill that was passed overwhelmingly by the legislature that the governor vetoed about providing citizen members to the Clean Water Fund Board. Currently, the Clean Water Fund Board is made up of members of the governor's cabinet. And so when we hear things like the Clean Water Fund Board recommends that, it sounds official and impartial, but really it means the governor recommends. So I think getting citizen voices provides a little balance, making sure that there are islanders on that is important, and so that's one bill, if I get sent back, that I would really hope to get all the way through the process this year, is making sure we have citizen voices on that board.
Thank you. Andrew?
All right. Well, a lot of you see me running up and down Route 2, and when it's too hot to run or I'm just tired, I will go for a swim out here in the bay, and I go from taking a breath where I tilt on my side and I look across this shimmering water and I see the mountains and the trees, and then I put my head underwater and it's this malaise of weeds and cigarette wrappers and Coke bottles. It's disgusting. I think a lot of us have seen a remarkable decline in the water quality just within our own lifetime, and we have to do something, and the Shoreline Protection Act takes us in a direction to protect that. But it is not a set it and forget it kind of legislation. The balance that you talk of, David, is something that we have to constantly strike and restrike. I was talking to a zoning administrator yesterday, and he said the current problem right now is that the state doesn't have the resources to get people responses to their questions and get their permits through in a timely manner. The agent he was working with had over 100 voicemails to respond to, not including emails and traditional letters. So that's our current challenge right now, and that's got to be fixed. Going forward, a state representative from this region where we have so much lakeshore needs to be meeting at least on an annual basis with zoning administrators or with the select board in Alburg where they don't have a zoning administrator collecting the issues from the previous building season and bringing them to Montpelier so that we can continue to do what the bill is supposed to do, protect the lake, but also have the least impact on homeowners. Thank you.
All right. Evan?
Protecting our shoreline is not a one-size-fits-all. It depends on whether it's rock, whether it's sand, whether it's ledge, whether it's clay. And so all those things have to be taken into consideration when you're preserving the lake shore. And I've lived on the lake since 1971, and I've seen dramatic changes, and our beach went from a rocky beach to a sandy beach when the high water came in few years ago, when we had all that rain in the spring, and things floating. And I believe that the people who live on the lakeshore we have to get them to invest in their lakeshore, and so that they understand that if you throw riprap down the shore, that it affects what's happening further down. So when you interfere with these things, I think it has to be done very measuredly, and I think people who know how to make these things work it needs to be discussed with people who know how to control this, because fixing one problem in one area and not being concerned about how it affects upstream or downstream has an impact on our lake.
Thank you, candidates. Do one more question before we take a quick break. We've talked about a lot of issues facing the state. We'll start with you, Mitzi. In what ways do you feel the government's currently functioning well at the state and local level?
So I think one of the things that is really taking root and starting to work well is embedding a culture of accountability and results measuring across state government. This results-based accountability program that I talked about, there's training moving out into various parts of state government, and it's not the kind of thing that we see and interface with a whole lot, but it is the kind of thing that helps an entire department look at what they're doing well and what they could be doing better. It helps budgeters like myself decide where should we put resources and where should we just start to steer resources away from things that aren't working. So I'm really excited that that's really taking hold. Another really exciting initiative throughout state government that started within Agency of Natural Resources is moving to, they've started in transportation, and I have been riding the judiciary and trying to work on them to get it moving, is this lean process where everybody involved, from top management, frontline workers, to the customers and end users of a system, get together and look at every single step in a process. And just in what they've done in A&R, in natural resources so far, they have been able to reduce wait times from, in some cases, 90 days to 6 months or 9 months, down to 4 or 5 days. They've been able to reduce costs and backlogs. It's been tremendous in making government more efficient and nimble. And so that's another program that I'd like to continue to spread throughout government.
Andrew.
I like this question. We get to give a nod to people who've been probably working hard without recognition for a long time. I think at the local level, I think our school boards and our select boards really do a great job. And I've lived in other parts of the country briefly. They just don't have that level of local governance that we have here. And I've met a lot of really great people that have served on school boards throughout the state, through the Vermont School Boards Association. And you know what, we're really well served. These people put in a lot of time, and they don't get compensated for it, and they do great work. Same with our select boards. They're called at all hours of the night. I think the solar project that we did here in North Hero, I think that was a great thing that the select board did. So I think our local governments are doing a great job. At the state level, there's a lot of good things going on at the state level. Our state park system is fantastic. I wish we had more state parks. I wish that places like North Hero didn't have to close, but those that are left, those state parks are a treasure and a jewel. And also our elections department. It's kind of under the radar, but if you ever have to deal with our elections department in this state, it is top notch. And the push that they have made to get early voting in place so that everybody can vote in this state. It's hard for some people with travel or disability or military service to get to the polls when they need to. And our election department has really met people to make sure that everybody in the state can vote. So those are some of the things that we're really doing well in government.
Evan?
I think government in Vermont works very well. The state employees really care. They really care about the public. A lot of your elected officials really care about the public, and they're concerned about how you feel and how it impacts you. I believe that they're trying very hard to keep the budget down so that people aren't overburdened with taxes and trying to spend fruitfully. And overall, I'm pretty satisfied. I'm just disappointed with the services that we get in Grand Isle.
Ben?
Well, recently, I'm on the Select Board in North Hero. We recently had a meeting. We talked about the repairs that are resurfacing done on Station Road. I don't know if any of you have seen that, North Hero people? It's a beautiful job. They just did a beautiful job. The road looks great. It's really been done very well. I think that the local level, everything I understand from my town and from the other towns in the county, it's very promising, the people involved in local government. My disappointment, frankly, has been what Evan is talking about, and what we're getting from the state. I think we get the short end of the stick, and I'm going to try to do better by everybody, particularly on the services. And for the schools, I think if the schools had more of our money went into the schools, we could do an awful lot better. And I think a really important thing about this is that the quality of the schools has a lot to do with our property values and the future of the town that Andy's been referring to. If we took our money and spent them on these schools, we could make model schools. And I think we'd be bringing in more people and the young families. And it would really do a lot for the future of the community and change those demographics that you're talking about. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. Let's take a 5-minute break. If you have any questions you want to submit, bring them up now if you have them, and we'll reconvene at 5 after. So we're going to start off with an interesting one. It's not a typical one you'd hear at a Democratic debate, but maybe your answers will be short, and that's fine. Someone wants to know, they're interested in hearing your thoughts about the recent Supreme Court decision, which struck down some laws limiting women's access to reproductive health services, including contraception and abortion. Are there laws that would limit access that you would support? And we're going to start with you, Andy.
Oh, are we? Okay. Well, I'm pro-choice. I mean, I'll just come out and say that here. I don't know if that really has an effect here at the state level. It's a federal issue, but I am pro-choice. That's what I'm going to say to that.
All right, very well.
A woman's body belongs to her, and I would be against voting for anything that would limit her access to any kind of service.
All right.
I think this
Ben.
question may be inspired by a decision that was announced today on a Texas law. I'm not sure. But I heard that there had been a decision that a Texas law that would limit the right to choose had been dumped, and I support that. I'm certainly pro-choice. I think that a woman has to have that decision. That's something that shouldn't be taken away from her.
Okay. Mitzi.
Ditto, strongly pro-choice, and not only laws that make sure that that choice exists, but also that access to the service exists, which I think is what a lot of the recent Supreme Court cases are about, because it's fine to have the right, But if the laws have been restricted so much in certain places that services don't exist, then the rights are irrelevant. And also just access to contraception. I worked on passage of a bill and funded the bill that this year that provided very affordable access to long-acting reversible contraception for women that choose, and affordable vasectomies for men who choose to do that, so that people can have control over their own reproductive decisions.
We're going back to Evan. This question is another one from the audience. What changes would you like to see in the criminal justice system? Private out-of-state prisons? Rehabilitation of prisoners while serving their terms? Question marks.
I'm not for privatization of prisons and sending people out of state. That my personal feeling on that is that doesn't help people change their lives. You send somebody to Tennessee, which is what we're doing in Kentucky, their families can't see them. They don't have any familiar people around them. That cannot help the recovery. I believe that people can change. I believe that given the right amount of services and the right kind of services, that they can change their lives. I've seen people change their lives, but we don't help them when we send them so far away from their families and their friends.
2 minutes? Well, I could really hold forth on this for a long time. Might even keep your attention the whole while. When I sat in Burlington last time, I was confronted with situations in which the same defendants would come in every 2 or 3 weeks, charged with various crimes, burglaries to find money to buy drugs. And it was a pattern over and over again. And I had a lot of people coming in on DWIs with these unbelievable blood alcohol numbers. You know, if 08 was the legal limit, they were at 2.2. I mean, 3 times the legal limit, just amazing. So I started a program which I call Rapid Referral, and I'd figured out under the bail laws that I could order someone into treatment as a condition of release. You know, keep your bail money, but I could look them in the eye and say, tomorrow morning at 9:30, you'll be at 31 Elmwood Avenue to meet with this person who's going to do an assessment as to whether or not you need treatment. And I got help from a law clerk. We wrote out this big order providing confidentiality, but they had to go. Make a long story short, the first 171 young defendants between age 16 and 23 that I sent into treatment, they did a 3-year retrospective study for the Vermont Crime Information Center. Their recidivism rate was 18%. That means they got arrested again in that 3-year period, 18% of those people. The control group of 300 defendants, again, 16 to 23, charged with heroin, Oxycontin, all that stuff, and DWI, big numbers. Their recidivism rate was 84%. I can tell you that this is tough stuff, but we can do something about it through the criminal justice system. There has to be punishment. There are times when people have to be punished. I'm going to get some more time later and tell you another story about this because I think it's important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mitzi.
I'm really proud that Vermont is right now at I don't know if it's the all-time low, but certainly the lowest in at least 14, 16 years, has the lowest number of prisoners out of state, and that number is declining. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing for a bunch of the reasons that Evan talked about. Vermont prisons cost more per inmate. Part of that is because there are certain folks that out-of-state placements won't take if they have high medical needs, certain high-cost populations. But a big reason is that they don't get programming out of state. There are opportunities within Vermont to get job training, to work towards a GED, and we are expanding treatment options in prisons. There has been a practice where you can't get, for example, substance abuse treatment while you're incarcerated, and that's changing, and in part to some of the stuff that Ben talked about. So I support working to continue to bring people back from out of state and really get them the treatment, because it's really hard to punish a crime out of somebody. There are times that that's appropriate. There are certainly a lot of cases where it's really about community safety, and we have to honor that and keep our community very safe. But I think doing what we can to look, this is a great place for RBA, and there's a lot of work that's been done in the criminal justice arena around which programs work and which don't work, and put our money into the ones that get people back into society, into being productive members and being self-sufficient.
Andrew.
I think we're starting to see a change in the attitude and how we look at criminal justice. And I think we're starting to see some opportunities to bring people back into society. We're spending almost as much money to lock people up as we are to educate our children, and that's just a shame and a drag on our society. Violent criminals, it's a different story, but most of them are not violent criminals. And I think we've seen some positive steps in this recent session, the Ban the Box bill, which took that box right off the top of the employment form that says, have you committed a crime? And it prevents a lot of ex-cons from getting a job. They still have to disclose that information later, but allows them to get a little further into the review process. And it's just a common sense thing, because if you think about it, when you come out of prison and you can't get a job, what are your options? You know how to do one thing well, which is probably to steal. And that's what you're going to revert to. So that was a big step. Does anybody know what the largest high school in the state of Vermont is? It is our Vermont penal system. We have a very large education system for our prisoners. And that's both sad and hopeful, right? It's sad that our largest high school is our Vermont penal system. But it's also hopeful that we are smart enough to invest the resources to give these folks a second chance, so that when they come out, they are educated, they can fill out a job application and be given a fair chance. And that works for all of us. Thank you.
We're going to start with Ben this time. Vermont's somewhat decriminalized marijuana, but legislation legalizing marijuana was somewhat close to passage in the legislature last session. Where do you stand on the issue of legalization? Is there any way to regulate legal marijuana that you would be comfortable with?
I think that the final vote on legalization was very much against. I don't know how close it came. I think it was like 120 to 20, was it? I don't know what the vote was. I should tell you that one of the other things I do, once a month I do a TV show in Burlington on Channel 17. They have a cable access station. It's the Judge Ben Show, not a very original title, but I do it about once a month, and I did a series of about 12 shows on marijuana and legalization. And I interviewed people from Florida, from Massachusetts, from Colorado. The Colorado interviews were very, very interesting, because these people were reporting on what happened in the first year after legalization of recreational marijuana, that is, stuff you could smoke for pleasure. Their fatality rate and road accidents because of marijuana went up 32%. Washington State, at the same time, had done legalization. In the first year after legalization, the number of people killed on their highways because of marijuana-impaired drivers increased from 9 to 20. My interviews with people from Massachusetts were really very sobering. No, that's probably an ill-chosen word, but what these drug counselors were telling me was that they were dealing with a lot of kids in school who had become addicted to this stuff, and it was really very, very serious. I don't pretend to think that that there's nothing wrong with it. I think there's a lot wrong with it. And I think if we could stop people from drinking alcohol, we should. We've become inured to the fact that 10,000 people a year at least are being killed on the highways by drunk drivers. I don't think we should take chances with increasing the number of people killed by marijuana, even though it's smaller than the number of those killed by alcohol. I think this is a problem to be addressed head-on in the schools. I've interviewed school counselors. I think this can be done. I think we can do more, and we can help these kids to avoid this. Thank you.
Nancy.
So last year, legalization bills passed the Senate and passed 2 committees in the House, and then died in my committee. And my main concerns, and there will be another push next year. There are strong proponents, there's a lot of groundwork being laid, and there will be another push this next session, I'm sure, to legalize. I voted against it last year. I think we need to, first, we need a lot more resources in education and prevention. One of the things that really alarmed me was in this youth risk behavior survey that adults, or that the health department does with kids in school every year, is that twice as many kids think that marijuana is less dangerous than tobacco. And I'm not here to say what's more or less dangerous, but a bunch of kids know that smoking tobacco regularly is not good for your health, and half that many kids think that smoking marijuana regularly is bad for your health. Also, twice as many kids have reported using marijuana in the last 30 days versus tobacco. We have, last year for the first time, fatalities on roadways from other drugs surpassed the number of fatalities from alcohol. So we also need better enforcement, and we need better testing tools to know when somebody is an impaired driver. And I think we need a robust conversation around the state, whether if we were to move down a legalization path, whether it should be a more highly regulated commercial type of enterprise, or whether it would be a kind of homegrown, expanded decriminalization, legalize or decriminalize a number of plants. They're very, very different, and it's really critical, but at this point it would take a lot for me to get comfortable with legalization.
Andrew. Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that children have been the focus of the last two people to speak, because that's central to the issue, is that we do know that youth using marijuana in excess causes brain damage that cannot be reversed. And so that needs to be central to whatever we do. We are likely to be surrounded by states and provinces that are going to address this issue before we do. And that's not necessarily a reason that we have to take it up, but that proximity is going to begin to infringe upon us. And we're left with a couple of models, or I guess three if you include status quo or prohibition. One is the one that the governor and the Senate proposed, which is the tax and regulate model that they have instituted in Colorado and Washington. And we have seen studies that say that teen use has increased in Colorado and Washington. And we have seen studies that show that teen use has decreased in Colorado and Washington. And that's the point, is that we just don't know. It hasn't been a long enough period of time that we understand the consequences of the tax and regulate model. And I don't see how we can, in good conscience, as a legislature, pass a model that we don't know the effect of just yet. We have already decriminalized a small amount of marijuana. I think we can continue to do that. We can visit the idea of recreational use of plants being grown in the home. That is something that I could be convinced to do. But the tax and regulate model, I'm going to need to see some hard figures out of Washington and Colorado that this is working and working well.
Evan.
Wow, this is a hot button issue. I've seen many kids come through here and get a criminal record with marijuana. Fortunately, that has changed. And it really did impact these young people, because every time you apply for a job now, they send out and they ask if you have a criminal record. And so they've changed that. And so both my children live in Colorado, so I called them up and I asked them about how this operates out in Colorado and how they track it, just because I want to know. And apparently they take the DNA of every plant so that they know the plants that are being grown. And before you can get into a dispensary, you need to show them your license. You need to fill out a piece of paper. You have to be 21. The problem I have with this is there's a lot of recreational use and of marijuana throughout this state. And I'd have to think about it a lot. I'd have to have more information, because I don't know if that keeps drug dealers in Vermont because they're supplying marijuana to people, or it would keep them out. And I just don't believe that we have enough information to decide whether or not we should legalize it yet. More research needs to be done.
We're going to be starting with Mitzi this time. Another question from the audience. Vermont's been a leader in legislating environmental conservation and innovation. We seem to be losing our momentum. What would you do to regain this momentum?
I'm not sure that I would agree with us losing momentum. We have a substantial amount of money that goes every year. It's raised through the property transfer tax when property is bought and sold to the Housing and Conservation Trust Fund, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, to secure environmentally sensitive areas. We've had some substantial legislation to, as we talked about earlier, protect shoreline, improve water quality, and we have, I think, some of the best clean energy legislation in the U.S. And the bill that was passed in a special session in June helps to strengthen use of renewable energy while giving towns a stronger say in the process as a town. So I think continuing to work on continuing to support those efforts is really key. I think one area that's going to be coming up a lot soon will probably be air quality. I think the EPA is building a little head of steam for that, and it's on our Agency of Natural Resource Department's radar screen to really be looking at what we can do for some air quality, both in terms of things like transportation, but also agriculture and industry.
All right, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the effort is still there. I think that the word innovation is key in there. I was at Marsh Billings Rockefeller National Park over in Woodstock, which is the only national park in the state of Vermont, and it's also the only national park that is dedicated to conservation. And those three men, the vision that they laid out, they created this conservation utopia. And the vision that they laid out and executed in this forest is really amazing. And it's the kind of vision that I think that we're lacking here as a state, particularly when it comes to renewables. We've had a lot of renewable projects, and we've heard things about 90% renewables by 2050. But I'm not clear who that's coming from and who's initiating that and how these little projects around the state actually fit into it. I think what we need is a real vision here for the state. This is our goal. This is how these projects fit into it. We need to bring Vermonters on board so we all understand where we're going. There's a great book called Drive. Actually, Jen and I read that in a book club. And one of the 3 points that he makes in this book on motivating people is purpose. And I think we've had purpose in the past. If you look at, you watch the great National Parks documentary by Ken Burns, there were some people with some real purpose to bring conservation to the forefront. We don't have that right now. We've just lost that little edge to have a vision for our future and to put these little pieces together and to be working towards something.
I think we're really interested. I mean, I know I'm really interested. I'm concerned because I have a grandchild, and I want this nation to be better for her, and I want her not to suffer because of my maluse of the land and the lake and energy. It's important that we consider our future. And I think we're doing a good job in Vermont. I mean, we have Green Up Day. Burlington's the first city in the nation that is all renewable energy. I believe that you have to get people to buy into this. I think when you're approaching a town about windmills or anything like that, they have to buy into it. So I think they need to see some sort of advantage that's coming to them if it's going to be their ridge line that has the windmills up, or their property that have the solar panels all over. I think we're doing a good job. I think we've come a long way, and I think people know that it's important and serious.
Hi. As Andy alluded to earlier, I've been working on a project trying to get a large solar facility located on property that the town of North Hero owns. We own a 50-acre tract, which is the site of our transfer station. Most of the tract isn't used for anything, in large part because it's the site of a capped landfill. I think solar energy is preferable to trying to generate it with wind turbines, because it's going to be difficult for some of the neighbors. We in North Hero, our select board, put this to the voters, and the vote was 84-2. So I think referendums are a good idea, and if you can get local support, it can really help. The rental fees that would be generated by the kind of installation I've been trying to put in would be quite substantial and would really help the town and its balance sheet. But in the long run, equally or even more important is the fact that so much energy could be generated that would not have to come from fossil fuels or even natural gas. I mean, if it comes through a solar panel, it really is going to be a very positive thing. I saw today in the news that each of the last 3 years has been the warmest year in the history of the Earth, and we've just got to do something. This is really serious stuff, and I think the state could do something to try to support solar installations, and I would certainly want to work toward that end. I think it would be beneficial in every way.
All right. Andy, we'll be starting with you on this one. This is always a tough question, and it comes up a lot. Can you talk about, I'll just read it how it's written. Is there any talk of funding education a different way other than property taxes?
Yes, there is talk of doing it through income. In fact, a lot of people actually do pay income based on our income sensitivity. But in the end, we are paying for a very expensive system, and we have to pay for it somehow. Yes, I mean, there's been a proposal out there that would move it from property taxes to income taxes. We have a lot of people who reside in this state who pay an awful lot of taxes who don't work here. And so when you talk about switching to that model of income, we have to remember that you could potentially be forfeiting some revenue in that, and it would leave us with less to fund the schools. I would love to see us actually, rather than talk about how we pay for it, start to talk about how we can change Act 68 to work better, so we don't have this frustrating situation where we are paying such high property taxes around the state.
All right. Evan.
Literally thousands of people have second homes in the islands, and we have property tax for them. And if that went away, I don't know how we'd be able to take care of our children and see that they were educated. And I don't think an income tax on Vermont residents would solve that problem. I think it'd become a dire proposition.
Ben.
Well, like everybody up here, and like everybody in the room, I've given this a lot of thought. I think that the notion that there can be taxes on non-residents that are different than those that are on residents, it makes it possible to do this. That is to say, not to have education solely funded through property taxes. And I just think it's really hurt the islands in that it's, despite the income sensitivity, there are people who just don't come out here. The taxes are too high, the education is uncertain. I'm really worried for South Hero. I think if they lose the 7th and 8th grade, it's going to hurt them. I know people have told me they're going to leave. So I think we're really at a crossroads. We really have to think this out. I haven't heard the specifics. I know one of the gubernatorial candidates, Galbraith, is talking about trying to change this check system to give relief on some of the property taxes. I'm very curious about that. I really want to learn some more. I hope you'll all learn along with me as to what this might be. Thank you.
Mitzi.
This is a really big question. Been involved in a lot of special work groups and speakers, task forces, and all that kind of stuff to try to see what else we can do. And I would favor moving a piece of it to income. Some issues that we haven't figured out how to get over is income is very volatile. Schools need a stable source of funding, and income taxes do this. So throughout, the 2008-9, in the depths of the recession, we were pretty fortunate that it wasn't based on income, or our schools would be in serious trouble, even more serious trouble. Again, we do have this bifurcated system, so perhaps it could be a mix, but then what do you do with renters? Somebody that qualifies as a non-residential property, so they would pay through their property taxes, but then the renters who are living there, would they be charged an income tax? There are some very, very complicated issues. Most people don't know that 25% of the general fund budget goes just straight to the education fund. So it's not just your property taxes. It's another substantial, over $300 million of the general fund goes straight to the education fund. So we fund education in a variety of ways, but we are more reliant on the property tax than any other state, and it is a hindrance, and it's something that I keep trying to plug away at every year. But I think a key piece is that we really need to look at how much money we're spending and what we're spending it on, because until we really address that, the source of funds isn't going to solve the problem entirely.
All right, thank you. Evan, we'll be going back to you. What would you try to do in the legislature to address the opiate epidemic? And the question specifically for the educational system and the Department of Children's and Family Services. What could you try to do as our legislator?
Well, I think we need to recognize it as a disease. That's what's happening nationwide. And we need these people to be treated. They love their children. All parents love their children. Whether they can take care of them becomes the issue. And when they're struggling with addiction and everybody's frowning at them and not trying to solve the problem, help them get to where they need to be so that they can take care of their own children. And it harms children when we take them away from their families. They love their parents too. And so I think our best avenue is to try to treat the opiate addiction and help these people along the way and recognize it for what it really and truly is, which is a disease. And it's the same as alcoholism. And we just need to help these people move along the right path.
I was part of the citizen review panel of two child homicides, children who were killed in Rutland and Winooski. In the course of those proceedings, I did some of my own investigation, and I got copies of interviews that police had conducted. I found that in both cases, the parents, the mothers, had serious opiate problems. In one of the cases, the child, the little 2-year-old, had suffered several fractures before she was put back in the house with this woman and her significant other, where she was murdered. I don't think that family reunification can be the most important consideration. I think the most important consideration is the safety of the child. And to do this, it requires a lot of effort from the Department of Children and Families workers. They've been plagued by tremendous caseloads. It's been very difficult for them. There also was a lot of pressure put on these people to reunify families to save money that otherwise would have gone into foster care. I can't generalize. I think there are some times when it's good to put the kid back with the parents.
And there's sometimes when it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And those decisions have to come through a judicial system, because the DCF workers are subject to all these political pressures in terms of saving money. And I think for the ultimate decision to be made by a judge who's well-informed and who's got the time to read the whole file and to understand what's going on is the best way to protect the kids. So many of these things come together here, you see, the social services and the judicial process and whatnot. We've got to try to do better for these children. Thank you.
Mitzi.
So I think there's a full spectrum, if I could sort of start at the back end and work backwards. I was on the Appropriations Committee when the new hub and spoke model got rolled out, and we have gradually funded treatment hubs in more and more places around Vermont, and there is one opening up in St. Albans. We put money in the budget to put a new treatment facility in St. Albans, which is the first one in the northwest corner of the state here. There's, you know, as we've talked about earlier, making sure both the judicial branch and DCF have enough resources to deal with this crisis. And it is staggering when you look at the number of children coming into DCF custody. The charts are just going like this. 80% is because of opiates. And for the first time, we have more children under 5 in DCF custody than teenagers, which means we need foster parents who are willing to tie shoelaces and change diapers and provide or find daycare. And it's astounding and shocking. But I think so making sure that we can deal with the epidemic is a big piece of it, but we need to be able to stem the tide and back up to the front end of the system. And this gets back to our conversations about strong schools, about building community engagement, and even things like strong after-school programs. Those are the riskiest hours between, I think statistically, between 3 and 6 or 4 and 7. Riskiest hours for kids to engage in unsavory behavior, shall we say. So making sure that kids have resources, kids have a place where they feel like they are engaged, and as kids move through towards adulthood, make sure we have a strong economy so that there are jobs, there are opportunities for people to live the right kind of life.
Andrew.
I appreciate this question because I think this is a major issue that is the source of more ills than we can even comprehend at this particular moment. We lead the nation in children being treated in our schools for psychological trauma. This is Vermont, and that's the opiate crisis. These numbers I threw out at the beginning: a third of our children hungry, 11 out of 103 kids in North Euro homeless. This is the opiate crisis. It's costing us every day in our schools, it's costing us in our social programs, and if we don't address it, it could cost us an entire generation of Vermonters. It's that serious. Right now, when an addict calls the hotline during a moment of clarity, this could be a parent who realizes that they're over the edge and they need help. They're put on a waiting list that lasts approximately 120 days. We have tried to address that. We have opened new clinics, but the problem is happening faster than we can address it. But we need to get to a point where that person is shown a hospital bed and a treatment facility that same day. That's the way that we get them back on their feet, get them taking care of their own children and feeding their own children. And until we do that, the excellent work that people are doing out here feeding children who are hungry and taking care of children who are homeless and fostering children who have been the victims of this, those symptoms are going to continue. This is the root cause, and we need to address it.
All right, thank you. I'm going to do one last question. This was another from the audience, and then we'll go to the closing statements. Ben, we're starting with you. What would you propose as a means of providing a public transportation system that would help our elderly be able to remain at their homes and also have the options to be off island, at least cider is helpful, but not doesn't meet an expansive need? That's the question.
Well, I'm one of Cider's volunteer drivers, and tomorrow morning I'm getting up early to take someone to a medical appointment. I helped recently to set up a system whereby people from Grand Isle and South Hero can go once a week into Milton to do their shopping. I think that cider seems to me to be the best answer that's at hand. I think those services could be expanded so that people could cope better with the isolation of living alone. A lot of the people I drive in for medical appointments, when they get to the house, there's a car there that they can't use because of some medical problem, and they're living alone. And I think cider has really been wonderful. It's just got to be supported more. I think the idea of regular scheduled trips where cider goes and picks up the people, which is happening now in the southern part of the county, and then takes them in to Milton, they do their shopping, and then they come back. I think that's a step in the right direction that has to be pursued and expanded. I don't say that as if it can just happen, but I think that's a place where the public funds could come in to help. I think the state government, Montpelier's got to understand that it is more expensive to have people living in rural communities. You know, we no longer have a state trooper in this county as a resident. It's been taken away to save money. I can't, it's one of those services that really is priceless, and it's been taken away from us. I just think we have to get the state government to understand you have to spend more to keep people living in outlying areas like Orange County. One of my fellow VBA board members has been waiting for 2 years for a ruling on a pretrial motion in the Orange County court. It's only because it's in Orange County. Thanks.
Mitzi.
So I think it doesn't just affect the aging population or the disabled population. It also affects the demographics, the people affected by the demographics of poverty that Andy has so clearly articulated here tonight. You know, think about what happens when your car breaks down and the cash you have to shell out to get new tires or fix a transmission or whatnot. It really impacts somebody's ability to get to a job, get to a grocery store. So one thing I've worked with Dick Mazza a bunch, and fingers crossed, I'm hoping that we'll get a little further down the line with a park and ride of some kind. I know that doesn't sound like it solves the public transportation problem, but once you have a place where people can congregate, then it's a lot easier to get bus companies to come and come here. You know, I have lived in the islands without a car for chunks of my life for various reasons, and it's a lot easier to get a ride, you know, to a central location in Route 2 than to get a ride to Williston or Essex or wherever I needed to go. So I think finding places, it sounds like a silly little problem, but I think getting communities to work together to get a couple of really good park and rides available so that we can then work with public transportation companies and with cider and with other vendors to be able to have a place to pick people up and really work from that, and also have a little more ride sharing and community-based solution like we Islanders are pretty good at. I think that's a big help. I know Sue Minter has been really instrumental when she was head of the Agency of Transportation and really thinking about public transportation and promoting that.
Andrew. First of all, I think it is important to recognize the work that Cider does. We've been watching my wife's grandparents age out in Indianapolis, and that transportation issue is a big one for them, and they just don't have anything like Cider. So Cider does help tremendously here in the islands. I serve on a school board with Dave Davis, who used to be chairman of the CCTA board. Their new name escapes me, Mountain Train? Yeah, something along that line. And there's been discussion about them coming up here, but that's been a no-go so far. If the projections are correct, and let's face it, they probably are 2030, we have roughly a third of our population over the age of 65. That's a whole new world. And we're going to have to reimagine the way that we do things. And one thing that comes to mind is we have transportation right now on the islands that goes door to door. It just happens to go to door to door and then go to the school. And then it doesn't go anywhere until the end of the day. We can join those two services. We can start to serve our youth and our elderly with the same services, with transportation that takes the kids to school in the morning and then gets people who need transportation into town in the evening. It's never going to be easy here in Vermont because our destinations are so spread out. And even being dropped at the local CCTA hub really is not all that convenient. You have a long way to go from there. But these are the kind of thoughts that we need to have. If we have transportation going around the island serving kids, let's use it to its full potential. So, thank you.
Evan?
I agree with Ben. I think supporting cider is wonderful because they actually pick you up at your house. And the question was about the elderly. They pick you up at the house, they take you where you need to go, and they get you back home. And it's kind of difficult as you get older to spend hours in a place. You want to go and do your grocery shopping and you want to come back home. Or you want to go to the doctor's office and come back home. You don't want to spend a lot of time just wandering around trying to fill up a couple of hours. And if we could support cider more, because they've been so effective with the elderly, I think that would be the way to go. Although a park and ride for other reasons and younger people would be great too. Anything that gets transportation and people to where they need to go in the islands sounds good to me.
All right, thank you. Well, now it's time, the end of the questions, it's time for closing statements. We'll go back again to the beginning. Start us off. Yeah?
Okay. Again, I've been a state employee for 30 years. I've been a county treasurer, I've been a town clerk, and I've been a treasurer. And I've been involved in state government. I've seen how it works. I've seen how it impacts the public. I know that the public wants to be served, that the public needs people out front that can assist them with their needs. I'm really aware of how important this courthouse is to us. I am concerned that we used to have 3 outpost troopers here, and now there are none. And that our sheriff has to finagle and apply for grants to get help to supply our law enforcement out here. Those are big issues, and I think they need to be addressed. And I want services back here. I want DCF out here. I'm concerned. When one year when I was working, we had 20 kids brought into DCF custody. 14 of those children were put up for termination of parental rights. And that tells me, and the other 6 were delinquencies. That tells me that we're getting the services too late, because 14 kids out of 20, when 6 are delinquencies, we shouldn't be terminating. Those people need help, and we should be giving it to them earlier, and that's what I'm concerned. We need services out here. We need them to come back here, and our money needs to be spent in this community.
Thank you. Ben?
Very good. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. It's gotten a lot warmer in this room than when we first started. I wore the jacket because my experience told me it'd be too cold, but you know, there it is. There's a lot that could be said, and I don't want to take any more time. You've been here for almost 2 hours. I just want to assure you that if I were fortunate enough to be elected to this position, that I would do my best to maintain contact with each town select board. I think it's very important that your representatives are in touch with each select board so you get an idea what's going on, and so that you as citizens know that there's some place you can go to with your concerns and can get help. And you'd start with your select board, and I would be in frequent contact with each select board so I'd know what's going on. And I'm certainly going to answer any phone calls or emails or any contacts that you want to make toward me. I'm going to answer you.
I may not answer you the next day, but I'm going to answer you, because I think that's really the heart of this job, is to know what's going on with the citizens in the district, and I'll do my best to do that. And what I would plan to do, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, would be that I would stay in Montpelier from every Tuesday through Friday while the legislature is in session, so that I could make those contacts that are important to having influence in the legislature. And let's see, what's the last thing in my notes? And I'm going to curtail all this other stuff I do, because I want to make this my full-time employment, and I want to be able to give all my energy to this. Gail Horn told me recently, she knows what I'm going to do, and it's going to be crazy. And I say, you got it right, Gail. It's going to be crazy. But I'm going to give it my best if you'll give me that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitzi.
It's been an incredible honor to be your representative for the last 7 terms. And at this point, my seniority and my position as chair of the appropriations gives Island Voices a place, to quote Hamilton, if anybody's a fan of Broadway, in the room where it happens. I think if you ask people in the legislature, you will hear that I'm one of the last people to leave the building at night at 9, 10 o'clock. I really try to build a cooperative, nonpartisan environment in my committee room. I've had, of the 4 committee bills, my committee does a budget and a budget adjustment every year, in addition to whatever other bills come through. 3 out of the 4 of those very difficult budget bills have been unanimous. I have very progressive Democrats and I have very conservative Republicans. So you'll get a lot of hard work and a lot of nonpartisanship, and really working to try to solve kind of the knotty issues that we deal with out of me. My focus is in accountability within state government and making sure that dollars are invested where we can really build results, and really trying to build a cooperative participatory process in the budgeting. And I know I've gone on and bored you to tears about the budget. It's my passion, because it's really where policy meets reality. It's how policy happens. It's how things get done. And so I hope to continue that work on behalf of Islanders and Vermonters.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and I thank Mitzi and Ben and Evan for being up here with me tonight. I thank the Grandisle Democrats for holding this little smackdown, and I thank all you for coming out on this summer ease. I know you could be home watching the RNC, so thank you for being here with us. When I decided to run for state representative, I knew that the opportunities to actually communicate with people were going to be far and few between. And I needed to be on point and focused. So when I sat down with a blank piece of paper and I started to write down the things that were most important to me, they were the issues that I covered a little bit tonight. The issues of education, of affordable college, of poverty, of hunger, of agriculture here in the islands. And then the next step is to figure out how you get people to vote for you and to contribute to your campaign. And I look at my list and I've got children and people who can't afford to go to college, and hungry children, and opiate addicts, and generally people who don't vote and don't contribute to campaigns. So I had a choice. I could remake that list, or I could go forward realizing that I'm asking people to vote not in their own self-interest, but out of concern for their neighbor and concern for the future. I'm a Democrat because I believe this is the party of compassion and concern for the future. And I've lived in Grand Isle County long enough to know that if we set our minds to doing something, we will do it. We will smack each other on Front Porch Forum for 6 months straight, but we will do it. And I think as a county and a party, it's time to set ourselves on helping our students, helping our farmers, and helping our poor. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to take a moment just to thank you all for coming here tonight. Remember, August 9th, make sure you vote. You can actually go and vote now if you'd like. And very importantly, November 8th is the other time you need to vote. I want to thank my timer, Michael Inners, for all the help. And most of all, I want to thank these candidates for such a great forum. Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.